Hello, my name is Dial Versailles, and today we're going to go over a close enough to comprehensive guide to the Ancient Fear adventure for Legends of Runeterra, the Path of Champions. This adventure comes in a 3.5 and a 6.5 difficulty, and we're going to go over the differences of both of those. For completion, you have to do it with, on 3.5, one champion of each region. And for that, you get a gold star vessel for each of the regions. And the order you get those in is Demacia, Ionia, PNZ, Noxus, Shadow Isles, Freljord, Bilgewater, Targon, Shurima, Vandal City, and Runeterra. If you want to know what it is, you can look at the legend levels, and everything past 50, it'll have the 11 gold star vessels. It's the same order as that. And this is the 6.5 adventure, and for that you do get 40 Fiddlesticks fragments for your first completion. Your second completion will give you a Platinum Vault. Your third completion is 20 Wild Fragments. The fourth completion is another Platinum Vault, and your last completion is just 8,000 Legend Points. Some people are thinking that might be a bug. Unclear. And to do that, you need to do it with 2 Runeterran champions, a PNZ champion, and 2 any champions. The special rules for both of them are Jump Scare, the 3.5 star adventure. The Jump Scare is when the foe draws a follower that costs 2 or less, they summon it. And the 6.5 is when the foe draws a follower that costs 3 or less, they summon it and grant it +2/+2 and Fearsome. So obviously the 6.5 is much more difficult. And of course it also has Deadly. When the foe summons a unit, grant its stats equal to half its stats rounded up, and the foe's spells and skills deal double damage. The +2/+2 and Fearsome applies after Deadly applies, so it isn't +3/+3. So that's nice at least. This is the map. It's a map. You start at the top left, go to the bottom right. This is the node overview. I've put some numbers here. So you can look over this if you want. We'll probably not go over this in detail, but you do. We'll go over this in detail. We'll do it now. They start with power, then there's a fight, then you get your support champion, and then you can pick between 2 fights, and then you can pick between these 3 event nodes. 2 more fights. You only do one of either of the 2 fights. There are 3 events here. The 12th, the one in the middle, is always a shop. Then you go to a healer, you fight Elise, you get a power, and you pick one of 2 fights. You get 3 choices here for events. The top and bottom are shops, and the middle is random. And you get a choice between 2 fights. And then this event, I think, is always a chest. I have never seen it be anything else, but presumably it could be. I just haven't seen it. And 25 and 26 are random events, then a healer, and then Fiddlesticks. And how Fiddlesticks work: each node is a name based on a different fear. Some of these nodes play very differently than anything else in the game, and which node you take is going to be based on what your deck can do. The Fiddlesticks Fiddlesticks himself can obliterate your entire deck very quickly, so you need to plan for this the entire adventure. This means trying not to cut at cards, picking up powers like counterfeit copies, avoiding cards that generate other cards, and potentially buying cards in the shop. The bigger your deck is, the easier Fiddlesticks is. However, it makes your deck less consistent. If you can one-turn kill, then it doesn't matter how many cards are in your deck. And also, many cards throughout the entire adventure have Philosopher's Stone and Elixir of Skill items. That means when they're played, they draw a card. And this works really well with the Jump Scare power, giving the opponent a lot of free units, so you have to deal with wide boards. And for tips and tricks, like I said, counterfeit copies is really good. Grifter's deck is good for the same reason. It lets you shuffle cards back in your deck. You want to avoid cards that add cards to your hand, so like Blade's Edge Power, you probably want to avoid that. There's a couple more. I can't think of them right now. The one that lets you forge every turn, that one you probably want to avoid if you're not getting as much value from it as you would lose for fighting Fiddlesticks on it. you do want to try to avoid those powers. Fast champions are, of course, very good. If you can outspeed the decks, that tends to work really well. Your choice of node is going to vary a lot by what your deck is capable of, and the mid-boss Elise is very difficult, probably the hardest node, if I'm honest, and then Fiddlesticks is also very strong. He's mostly strong because he can deck you out, less that he'll actually kill you before that happens. You should be careful about low power decks, in particularly the 6.5 adventure. Once jump scare starts giving everything fearsome, if you have low power, you just can't block. So if you're trying to play Annie against a 6.5, you're probably just going to die because you can't block. And then Unyielding Determination legendary power is very good because it gives you an extra revive within a set. And then these are the champions that I would think about using to complete all of the adventures in the 3.5 star at least. For the 6.5 star, just use whatever your strongest thing is. If you have something with a lot of constellation stars, probably lean towards that. You do have to do it with 2 Runeterra champions, so I think I did it with Evelyn and Fiddlesticks and that felt fine. But I think also like Jin, Nico, if you play Guardian Orb build, they can just make infinite Nikos. It should be pretty good. Jin's really good at stunning things, and then Varus is quick, but probably not quick enough for the 6.5 adventure. I might be wrong about that. I haven't tried all of these, but yeah, and I'm sure everyone can, or someone's going to be able to do it with every champion. Just I think these are going to be your easiest options. I starred what I won with for my wins. Jinx, you have to be careful. Normally you'd use the power that discards your entire hand and then replaces it all with Pow Pows. If you do that on Fiddlesticks, you'll lose double the cards. This can be fine as long as you win before Fiddlesticks, before your deck ends up running out. So, or if you have counterfeit copies, you can just replenish. But you just have to be aware of that. I liked Nora, Misfortune, Lux Illuminated, Elise, and Kaiza, just because they're extremely quick. So you just win on round like 2 or 3, and then you don't have a problem. So this is what I would do. You do have to be careful on also like Vex and Morgana when you create a bunch of cards. That can be a problem. Nyla, say you're gonna do just Guardian, Oath of the Guardians and Star Gems probably. So, and these are the enemy decks. So the first one is Sleepless Slumber. The power here is the Relentless Dark. I think that darkness picture is too big, but whatever. When the foe attacks, they play a darkness targeting the player's nexus. So every time they attack, you're going to take at least 2 damage. However, the deck has Twisted Catalyzer, so every time that strikes, it's going to do, the darkness will do 1 extra damage, and it'll do, starting at 4, and then +1 on the 6.5 star adventure, or +2 rather, every time the Twisted Catalyzer strikes. And these are the decks, so you can look over the card list if you want. I'm not going to read out every card, but I also have the health, mana gems, and total cards in the deck. But we will talk about the particular threats. So like I said, Twisted Catalyzer, on strike grants darkness everywhere, 1 extra damage. So that will make it so that every time they attack, they'll take more damage. So try not to attack into Twisted Catalyzer if you can avoid it. If you're just going to give him extra darkness powers. Also for the pictures on these, I'm mostly going to be using for the 6.5 star adventure. Those pictures, everything on 3.5 is, less difficult than this. The free darkness will trigger attune on Darkbulb Acolyte, and you're just going to take some damage here. I think your primary threats, other than Twisted Catalyzer, are Doom Beast. So when he drops, he does 4 damage to the enemy nexus, which, hurts and then he's also a 10-5. And then you have Ixtali Sentinel. Ixtali Sentinel is bad because when you play your next Darkness this round, copy it targeting the enemy Nexus. Normally, the AI is just going to play Darkness. That's the thing that it'll do. And so, if it got up to like a pretty good level from Twisted Catalyzer hitting, and then he plays it, you could take like 10 or 12 damage. And yeah, that's why it is the biggest threat. I don't feel like the rest of the cards here are super relevant. Piercing Darkness can remove one of your units. And you don't have to worry too much about the free darknesses that get created, aside from when Ixtali's Sentinel is played. You also notice that like this has Glimpse Beyond, and so a lot of the decks do, or have other ways of drawing cards, like Stilted Roadmaker has Philosopher's Stones. These will trigger the jump scare power probably, or get closer to triggering jump scare by getting cards out of the deck. And so everything with draw can be a threat because it will refill the board or give them an infinite amount of cards to play. So that's just true kind of across the board for every adventure. The next thing you have is Shadow in the Brush. This is a choice node between Shadow in the Brush and Vicious Mockery. And so this enemy power on the 3.5 star is called Eyes in the Dark. When the foe transforms one of their units, give it +2/+2 this round. And on the 6.5, it gives it +5/+5 instead. Shadow in the Brush, I didn't mark anything as a specific threat. Towering Hierophant is probably the worst one, and so this is the deck list. You can look over it. The difference between the 3.5 star deck and the 5.5 star deck is 25 health, 1 mana gem, and obviously everything has higher stats because of Deadly. Stats listed here are with Deadly. The Valley of Imitation comes with Home Turf, and versus Tear of the Goddess in the 3.5 star, and that's basically the only difference. So for threats, I put a question mark because nothing is really threatening on its own. But some interesting things are that all of the transform powers do have Elixir of Skill, so they'll draw a card. So every time, basically, I think all their cards are ambush cards, and every time they transform them, yeah, all the units are ambush. And so every time they do that, they're going to draw a card when they transform them. And one of the other differences I forgot to notice is Paka Cub. There's 6 in the 3.5 star, and there's only 3 in the 6.5 star, and they trade that for 3 Towering Hierophants. Okay. So, Valley of Imitation is kind of your biggest threat, because when there's a bunch of those on board, you can end up with a situation like I have on the bottom here, where you have 3 Towering Hierophants. 2 of those were from Valley of Imitation. Also, Valley of Imitation does get, I think, extra stats from Deadly, which I'm not sure it's supposed to, but seems to me. So you can see those are 11-10 instead of 9-8. And that can happen on a pretty early round. Also has Desert Duel, which can, remove one of your units, but it's not too important, I don't think. But yeah, so, I don't know. The stats aren't permanent, and if you kill the unit when the Valley of Imitation transforms into it, then it's just, they're dead, and it's not that big of a deal. So, overall, I think this adventure is pretty easy, but I mean, as you can see, that board has 3 big units with Overwhelm, which could be a problem if you let the fights get that long, and you have to deal with that. Next, we have Vicious Mockery, whose power is they're all laughing. When the foe summons a unit, grant gloom to the player's units with less power than it. So this is less bad in the 3.5 star than in the 6.5 star, because in the 3.5 star, their units have less power. But yeah, the deck differences are Gloom Sprites has Staunch Defender on the 6.5, and there's less grotesque gifts. They trade that for an extra Gloom Sprite and an extra Allay. Allay has Philosopher's Stone, so it could trigger into extra jump scares. And then, yeah, it's just mostly cards that have Gloom. I think all of them almost can do Gloom. And so I don't find this node to be super threatening. On your first round, you kind of want to pass to let your opponent play a card, because, like, let's say you drop a 3/3 or whatever, and they drop a lay, then you'll get hit with Gloom. But if you wait until after they play it, then you'll skip one. Tree Sprites will boost all other units, so if you do get one stack of Gloom, that'll boost that. You have Existential Dread, which will give that to everything, so the combination of that two can do that. And then you have a Family Reunion, which will also grant Gloom and then boost units. It usually boosts itself and not you. And you have Grim, which will grant 4 Gloom. Also has high stats, so it'll usually be applying Gloom just from being played. And Glare has Grifter's deck on it, so if you end up in late game, the only card left will be Glare, more or less. And so they can use that 6 times per turn. That's the limit of the AI being able to play the same card, but that can happen and lose a lot of units that way. Normally this is dead before then. The units, if you look at their power and health, aren't too threatening aside from Grim, so they're pretty easy to remove, and then you can just, hit the Nexus and win. Next we have Thalassophobia. This is a choice node between Thalassophobia and the Dread. The enemy power for this one is Blood in the Water. Round start, the foe creates a Fleeting the List in hand. The List is a slow spell which grants vulnerable to an enemy, and if it already has vulnerable, the strongest ally starts a free attack challenge unit. So obviously a bunch of the cards in the deck also apply vulnerable. The difference between the 3.5 star and the 6.5 star is that the list has Elixir of Sorcery, or is that the one that doubles? I feel like Elixir of Sorcery is draw. Oh no, I'm confused. No, Elixir of Sorcery is right. Elixir of Skill draws, Elixir of Sorcery doubles. So the list will play twice on the 6.5, which means it'll always give vulnerable and then a starter free attack. And as you can see here, you just have a bunch of sharks and sea creatures. You have a bunch of ways to give vulnerable through You Be Warned, Ruthless Predator, Chum the Waters. I've never seen Blood in the Water actually be played, but I assume that it can be. I've just never seen it. Jawfish gets Overwhelm in the 6.5 versus plus stats in the 3.5, and those are the main differences. Shorttooth does start with Staunch Defender. It only has 3 health. All these units, aside from Hunting Fleet and I guess Bakai, Witherclaw, and Jawfish, have low health. If you just don't get to the point where they play those cards, then it's fine. So like I said, Elixir of Sorcery is on the list, which copies it on the same target. The music in this node is really good. It's actually fun to listen to. I normally play with sound off, but for some reason I had it on and it was really nice. Hunting Fleet is a 12/12, which gives you Golden Narwhal, which means that they can use the list on that if they create a card for you. The thing, though, is that their biggest unit is Hunting Fleet, and Hunting Fleet doesn't have Overwhelm. So, because it doesn't have Overwhelm, as long as you have a blocker, you're usually fine, and it's just not a big deal to deal with this. You can take Overwhelm from like Longtooth and Shorttooth, and I guess Jawfish in the 6.5 star, but generally, like, everything is pretty easy to deal with, and I find this to be easier than the Dread, even though like you might lose 1 unit per turn to the list. Also, the way the list works is that it'll target whatever doesn't have vulnerable first, and then it'll target whatever unit is on the right. So if you do attacks to change your order, you'll be losing whatever's on the right, and that could help you, keep a unit alive or whatever. Avoid getting hit by Overwhelm if the biggest unit on the board does happen to have Overwhelm at the time. But yeah, overall, I don't find Thalassophobia to be very difficult. Thalassophobia is the fear of, I think, sharks in deep water. The Dread is the other node in that section, and the enemy powers for the Dread is called Die of Fright. Round end, kill the player's units with 0 power on the 3.5 star, and on the 6.5 star, it's round end. Grant the player's units -1/-0, then kill all the player's units with 0 power. So eventually, whatever unit you have, unless it's growing, will die to Die of Fright in the 6.5 star. The differences are you have 2 less Bakai Reapers in the 6.5, which means they can get to their better cards faster. Has 1 extra mana gem, 25 extra health. And aside from that, I believe the biggest change is Erastin the Disgrace. Comes with Shadow Totem and Nomad's Medallion instead of just Ancient Coin. This lets it come out a little bit faster. And also, Frenzied Skitter has Shadow Totem as well. Death Grasp Cultist has Nomad's Medallion instead of Ancient Coin. So things are faster and there's more of them. I guess I forgot to highlight, but yeah, on the 6.5, the threats are the same as on the 3.5. And so a lot of these cards will give negative power. So for example, Ancient Malediction is -3 power. Spirit Fire gives -2 to everything. Frenzied Skitter gives -1 on the round that it's summoned. Death Grasp Cultist does the curse, does terror whenever you summon a Titanic ally, which they do fairly often. You also have Harrowing Return, which will revive the strongest dead allied follower, and granted Ephemeral Fearsome, give enemies -1 this round. And Spirit Fire will do -2, like I said, and then round end it does 2 damage to every unit, and it does 4 if it's on the 6.5 star adventure. I think Thalassophobia is, generally speaking, easier if you get to the point where Erastin comes down. It's really bad. So Erastin, as you can see here on the 6.5 star, is an 18/6, and when it summons, it is granted Deathless. This means you can't remove it by killing it. When it attacks, it gives enemies -1/-0 this round. This, combined with everything else, can kill your units by getting it down to 0 power. It also has Shadow Totem in the 6.5 star adventure, which means there will be 2 of them. And like I said, they can't, generally speaking, be killed because of the Deathless. It'll revive every time it's killed. However, it will revive with only 1 hit point. So if you have a way to just do 1 damage pings, you can sort of keep it down. But generally speaking, I would just get a Thalassophobia. It's easier. Ancient Malediction is the curse that I think gives terror. So it's -3 power. And this is either going to burn your mana just by playing the curse over and over, or it'll kill your unit. And like I said, since there are 2 Erastins on board, when it attacks, it'll give all your units -2. Combine that with anything else, and it's just terrible. Especially like Death Grasp Cultist. That'll summon 2 units. If you do kill them, they'll summon again, giving terror. Just stacking terror on your strongest units. So you want to get rid of Death Grasp Cultist as soon as possible, and hopefully you win before Erastin comes out, or you have some way to obliterate, silence. Yeah, if you don't, then you're probably going to lose. And then even if Rastin dies, as Harrowing return to bring it back, and it's just bad. Next we have Elise, whose power is the Skittering. Game start, the foe shuffles 13 spider lanes into the player's deck. When you draw one, they steal it and summon it if able. This means that it'll replace one of your draws by giving them a unit, which is very bad. You don't want that to happen. And then on the 6.5 star adventure, instead of spider lanes, you get arachnoid horrors, which are 3/2 fearsomes. And so this is Elise's deck. Ignore the fact that I just changed some of the ordering around. So Elise's deck has a bunch of spiders in it, as you would assume. Doesn't have Vile Feast though. It has no way to do any sort of pings to your units, which is probably very good. House Spider in the 6.5 does come with Ninja Tabby. Staunch Defender is on Elise in this adventure as well. I think it might be on something else too, but I didn't write it down, so maybe not. And then Arachnoid Horror does have Great Club, which means it has Overwhelm in the 6.5. And most importantly, Shrieking Spinner has Quick Strike Blade in the 6.5 star adventure, and we'll go ahead and look at what that looks like. So Shrieking Spinner is a 4-cost card that on attack gives Spider Allies +2/+0 this round. With Quick Strike Blade, that means it'll get to get a free attack when it's played, and then it'll get to attack again, which will give all of these spiders +4/+4. Arachnoid Host, when summoned, also grants spiders +2/+0. This is less bad. And then you have Necrotic Arachnoid, who, when another ally dies, drain 1 from the enemy nexus. Considering how much damage you can take in round 1, when Necrotic Arachnoid comes down, you might not have enough life to survive. And so just trying to remove any of the other units before you kill Necrotic Arachnoid will kill you. Elise is, of course, also a threat by giving everything Challenger. So you can see basically on here, this is a board that happened before any cards were played on the 6.5 star adventure. So they get a House Spider for free, which summons a Spiderling. And then there's a Precious Pet that probably drew into Frenzied Skitterer. And then Elise is summoned on the board for free from Staunch Defender. And then I drew an Arachnoid Horror, so that's there too. And so, yeah, Elise is tough. And then even if you kill everything, Glimpse Beyond can fill the board, or Precious Pet, I think, has Philosopher's Stone. Yeah, Precious Pet has Philosopher's Stone, so that'll draw into other cards as well. Necrotic Arachnoid will summon 2 Necrotic Nestlings. Those aren't really important in themselves, other than the fact that they'll fill the board, and if you kill them, you'll lose another hit point. Yeah, something that happens very often. So like if you take this board, there's 21, 29, 35 damage on it. If they play a Shrieking Spinner, let's say replacing a Spiderling, you'll get attacked for 5, and then all of that damage will go up by 2 each. So it would be whatever I said, plus 12. And yeah, you can just die in round 2. It's fairly common. So that is the problem with Elise. Fearsome and Challenger means that you don't always get to choose how you block, and if you can't get rid of like 2 or 3 units early on, you'll probably lose the game. Or if Shrieking Spinner gets summoned on round 2, you'll also probably lose the game. You just need a way to deal with it, otherwise you're in trouble. After that, assuming you win, there is a choice node between the Pale Death and Survive the Night. Pale Death is kind of easy on the 3.5 star. The power is called Thalassophobia. That's the fear of death. When the foe slays a unit with a spell or skill, they deal 3 to the player's nexus. And on the 6.5, it does 5 damage to the player's nexus. Here is the deck. What I've highlighted here are cards that kill their unit and your unit. So if that happens, you're you're going to trigger Thalassophobia twice. So on the 3.5 star, you would take 6 damage, and on the 5.5 or the 6.5 star, you would take 10 damage. You only have around 40 hit points, so give or take. So if this happens 4 times, you lose the game. It also has the Ruination. I don't think that's super significant. You either need to win before that comes out, or you'll lose. But I mean, usually you can win before it comes out. Not that hard. However, there's a lot of things that can happen that, can make you die before a win. So Ruination isn't always the problem. It's all the other things around it. The only differences between the starting decks are Fading Icon has Staunch Defender in the 6.5, and Ruination has Grifter's Deck, and Absorb Soul trades Poro Snacks for Mighty Mustache, so it's just better Poro. Not a big deal, really. So I think this is the most difficult choice between Survive the Night and the Pale Death. If you can clear the board pretty regularly, the Pale Death can be okay. Otherwise, sometimes you can just take too much damage and just die. You usually don't die from being attacked. You'll usually die from them killing their own units with things like Rumble, Glimpse Beyond, Iron Legionary, and Aether Fiend. So these just come out, kill one of their units, kill one of yours, and like I said, that triggers twice. It only has to happen 4 times and you lose. Ruination, like I said, can come out. Probably won't. Yeah. So, but however, if you don't have any stuns, or if you have bad stuns, bad removal, this might be your only choice. And so the main time you're going to die is fighting Elise. The second main time is going to be choosing between the Pale Death and Survive the Night. Now, we've talked about it a little. This is Survive the Night. Survive the Night works in a way completely different from any other adventure in Legends of Runeterra. Enemy power is called Relentless Undead. Round start, the foe deals 10 to their Nexus and rallies. The player cannot damage the foe's Nexus. And on the 6.5, the 10 damage goes to 20 instead. I actually find the 6.5 to die a lot quicker than the 3.5 star. You might go less rounds there. However, there are different problems. And so this is the deck. As you can see, the 3.5 star starts with 40 hit points, but it does take 10 damage on the first round, so you'll only see 30. And same with the 6.5, starts with 70, but since it takes 20, it'll only show 50. There are 29 cards in each of the decks, and I've highlighted different things for what is the threats in these different adventures. So Darkwater Scourge and like Soul Gorger and the Heroine are things that'll give life steal. So when it steals life, obviously it'll last 4 rounds. At a baseline, you only have to survive 3 rounds for each of those, although a minion will definitely get played in the 3.5 star adventure, so you'll have to last at least 4. It's very likely you'll also see Darkwater Scourge. You might win before Soul Gorger comes out. You won't always see that. And then on the 6.5 star, I think a bigger threat is Stygian Onlooker because it has Philosopher's Stone and it can jump scare out basically everything here except for Soul Gorger. So any unit that it draws into will be a problem. Escaped Abomination, which is summoned when you kill the Cursed Keeper, does also have Overwhelm 6.5 star. And yeah. So here are the threats and notes. You have the Undying. It is a 10/10 because it has Cursed Symbol. It can be blocked unless it gets jump scare, in which case it'll have Fearsome. But it can be blocked, so that's nice. Here's Blighted Battle Axe, I think is one of the worst cards. It has +6/+6 on the 6.5 and +5/+5 on the 3.5 star adventure. If they equip it to something like Soul Gorger, that'll give a big lifesteal unit more lifesteal. And if they equip it to something like Escaped Abomination, you can have a 15/14 Escaped Abomination. and that's hard to deal with because it has the Overwhelm. This is a screenshot of just round 1. So you have a Cursed Keeper, Stygian Onlooker, 2 Undyings, another Stygian Onlooker, and a minion. So that's 25, 30, 43 damage on round 1. So that's your problem on the 6.5 star. On the 3.5 star, your problem is just the lifesteal units. If you can keep the lifesteal units down, you're going to be okay. You can also note that a lot of these units do come with Fearsome because of Jump Scare. So those are going to be hard to block, especially on round 1 where you might not have like a couple units with 3 power. I think it's fine to take this node if you have good stun, frostbite, removal. Otherwise, you probably have to take the Pale Death even if it's not like a great choice, because this node can just kill you in 2 rounds. And it does rally every round, so you have to deal with that this kind of attack every round. So yeah, with stuns, you'll expect to end on round 4 in the 3.5 star, otherwise round 5 or 6 probably in either adventure. One of the things that I had happen when I was testing these decks, I was playing Aurelion Soul mostly. It's the easiest way to get the deck list. Was that Survive the Night would kill itself before I could see all of the cards in the deck. So as long as you have a way to deal with what's put in front of you, it's actually not that bad. They'll die in like 3 or 4 rounds. You can silence or obliterate the Undying. That'll make it so that it doesn't revive. You can also obliterate or silence Cursed Keeper, and then you won't get the Escaped Abomination. Sometimes it's better to just take the damage from the Cursed Keeper, because it's less than an Escaped Abomination. So if you don't have any way to remove Escaped Abomination, I'd probably just take the damage from Cursed Keeper. That seems fine. Minion will come out for sure, so they'll always get like at least +2. But on the 6.5, if they're taking 20 damage a round, then +2 doesn't matter until it's happened, 5 times. Whereas on the 3.5 star, it matters more often. And you can win the game early through alternate means, like milling the deck out with Fiddlesticks. You can win with Rise. Yeah, so that is that node. I don't know what's easier between the Pale Death and Survive the Night. This is, I think, the hardest node choice, and it kind of depends what your deck is good at, or hopefully you have healing for the other one. Next, you have a choice between Sickening Plunge and Creeping Death. Sickening Plunge is, their enemy power is Free Fall. At the end of round 7, deals 77 damage to the player's Nexus. That's the same in both the 3.5 and 6.5, because, it doesn't matter. Your Nexus doesn't have 77 health. There are some ways to make that happen, but generally speaking, you do not. And since you're falling, you get to see a lot of birds, I guess. And most of what this deck tries to do is stall you out rather than kill you. Gilsong Swallow has Great Club in the 6.5 star, and I think that's the only difference, except Harsh Winds actually does come with Farsight Alteration in the 6.5. So, yeah. So it'll start with that in hand. The things that you're worried about are going to be just how often it's slowing you down. So between Harsh Winds, Will of Ionia, Windsinger, that's returning a lot of cards to your hand, or Frostbiting it, you do only have 7 rounds to win, so that is significant. Here we have a picture of Gilsong Swallow, which is baseline a 1-cost 2/1 in the 6.5 star adventure. It does get overwhelmed, and it is summoned through either Gilsong Call, which is an elemental skill. This has Elixir of Sorcery, I think. Yeah, on both. And then on the 6.5 star, it'll have Elixir of Sorcery on Gale Song Flock, which will summon a Gale Song Swallow. I cannot say this word. And grant it +1/+1 for each other elemental spell and skill you've played this game. Harsh Winds is elemental. Gale Song spells are elemental. I'm gonna guess Rejuvenating Breeze is also elemental, but I don't know for sure. And so you can get a fairly big Gale Song Swallow pretty fast. So like a 9/8 could probably be round 3. So yeah, you have to worry about that. Royal Shimmerwing will give other birds quick attack and +1/+0. This does come with Staunch Defender in the 6.5 star. You probably won't see it in the 3.5 star, but you will have to deal with that in the 6.5 star. And then the rest is just trying to make sure you can hit the enemy nexus while you're being slowed down. I think I generally haven't had problems finishing this by turn 7, so it shouldn't be that difficult. A lot of things are pretty easy to remove here. Also, all the birds that has Fleet Feather, Tracker, and Omen Hawk, those also have Philosopher's Stone, so it can fill its board up with like really tiny birds. Also, the Omen Hawk will give plus stats to the top card in the deck, so that'll combine with Deadly on the 6.5, and you'll have to deal with that. It does have Divine Draft and Howling Gale, which are just damage spells. They aren't too significant. They only do 2 damage. Yeah, mostly you're just worried about just getting all your stuff returned to your hand, or getting frostbitten right at the end when you're trying to finish off the game. And yeah, other than that, I don't think I've ever been killed by the birds attacking me. And your other choice node for that is Creeping Hatred, whose power is Wrathful Wilderness. This is the same on both 3.5 and the 6.5. Round start, if the foe has the attack token, they summon an Overgrown Snapvine. Overgrown Snapvine is a 6-cost 5/3, and when you play a follower, kill it to summon an Overgrown Snapvine. It has Fearsome. So basically, once one of them is on the board, it's really easy for the whole board to just be Overgrown Snapvine, except for the fact that Jump Scare does summon it. It doesn't summon the follower, not play it. So anything summoned through Jump Scare won't become an Overgrown Snapvine. And then the differences in the deck are that those numbers are backwards. Nope, they're correct. Okay. The differences between the deck are the 3.5 star does have Bark Beast in it. The 6.5 star does not. They get 3 copies of Crumble instead, and it also gets another 3 copies of Overgrown Snapvine. One of them does have Staunch Defender, so we'll start with 1 in play, and the Undying has Philosopher's Stone, and Iceborne Legacy has Elixir of Skill, so when it plays Iceborne Legacy, it'll draw a card. Along with Grifter's deck, it can be played a lot of times in one round. Your main threats are going to be Overgrown Snapvine itself. It'll be an 8/5 with Fearsome in the 6.5 star. Mr. Root I found to be kind of problematic just because of the summon. He plays, he becomes an Overgrown Snapvine. He also draws a card, and then you get, Jump Scare triggers. And Iceborne Legacy, of course, can be a problem as well. The AI is not super good at playing it, but if it does get a couple of triggers on Overgrown Snapvine, which is likely because, it's the biggest unit usually, and also it shows up for free every time they have the attack token. So it's likely they'll have an Overgrown Snapvine, and they'll use Iceborne Legacy on it. You can get some very big Snapvines. And then, yeah. So I wrote down, if you can deal with a large board with Fearsome, then this is fine. And that's true. Also, if you can just kill the Snapvines when they come up, then you don't have to worry about the overstatted for free units. That can be a problem. I think the birds are easier. Also, the overgrown sapines do have fearsome, so again, just makes it hard to block. And yeah, I think we've gone over everything else. I don't know which one of these is harder. Neither of them are too bad, but my guess is that Creeping Death is going to be harder than Sickening Plunge, just because it gets a lot of free value, but kind of so does the other one. So, up to you. I don't think either of them are as hard as the previous two. A lot of times you will be going into both of these with low health, though, and that can be a problem. So just be careful. And then finally, we have Fiddlesticks, whose power is Recurring Nightmares. Game start, the foe plants 8 units as nightmares in your deck, and round end, the foe terrifies 1 for each card you added to your hand this round. This is why we're not removing cards from our deck, and this is why we're looking for counterfeit copies or Grifter's deck. It's because getting terrified will obliterate your entire deck very quickly. And these are the differences between the decks. There isn't much. The 6.5 star has 99 health. I wrote 3 mana gems? That can't possibly be right. Alright, let's try that again. Fiddlesticks' deck on the 6.5 does have 99 health and 5 mana gems, not 3. And Grotesque Gift does not have Shadow Totem. However, what happens is the deck will have 3 Fiddlesticks in the deck, and it'll have 8 Nightmares. Now, I wrote down quantity 1 for those Nightmares. That's not always true. The Nightmares are usually 1 of each, but sometimes you'll get 2. I've never seen more than 2 of the same Nightmare come out, but I suppose it's possible. And anything that comes out as a Nightmare does have a random, I think, rare or epic item. So it could be like Black Cleaver, it can be Shadow Totem, it can be a bunch of other things. Reckoner Mark are just some things that I've seen. Titan's Axe. So those can show up on those. And Grotesque Gift, since it exists as both a Nightmare and a normal card, if the Nightmare comes out, all other copies of it will then get the item attached to it, but it will normally only have Philosopher's Stone and not the extra. So the differences in the decks are that Reap has Elixir of Sorcery, and Crowstorm has Elixir of Sorcery in the 6.5 star deck, and that is mostly it. I wrote down Overgrown Snapvine as an item for the Overgrown Snapvine. Obviously that is wrong. Alright, fix that. So yeah, these are the deck lists. The actual deck itself, not too bad aside from the Dread Harvester. Reap, Vengeance, and Crowstorm, the spells are pretty bad. And then the Nightmares are mostly where your problems are going to come from. And then here are your threats and the notes. Your threat is, of course, Fiddlesticks. When he comes out, he will apply 2 Gloom to all of your enemies, all of its enemies, all of your units. It'll also make Crowstorm, which is his champion spell. So if he draws 2 copies, he'll have an extra Crowstorm, which can mill you more. Your biggest threat is going to get hit by mill and just having your entire deck obliterated. Dread Harvester, their power is play kill a unit. This is unaffected by Spell Shield. So even if you have something like Aurelian Soul on the board, it normally has Spell Shield, Dread Harvester will get rid of that. He does have Arastin the Disgraced in the deck, so you have to deal with that as well. He has Vengeance for 3 mana, so normally on round 1 you'll play a card and then it'll get hit by Vengeance. Also, since Reap has Elixir of Sorcery, you'll often get hit by Reap and Vengeance, so that'll get rid of Spell Shield and then kill your unit. Crowstorm is of course a problem, especially on the 6.5 where it has Elixir of Sorcery, so you'll mill 4 and have everything given 4 gloom. And this is a screenshot of one of the rounds where I lost a lot of cards in one round, and so they went from no board to a full board, and that board is terrifying. and it has Necrotic Arachnoid in it, it has Rast in, Overgrown Snapvine, so that is just a thing that happens. Some ways that can help: if you have a bigger deck, that means there's less opportunity for those nightmares to trigger. So if you have like a 40 card deck, they have to get through a lot more cards. Your starting hand does count, so like the 5 cards you start the game with or whatever, those will get obliterated. You'll lose 5 cards at the end of that round, plus anything you add to your deck. So if you started with 40, you draw 5. You probably draw a couple more than 5, but let's say you draw 5. So you now have 35 cards in your deck. It'll obliterate 5 at the end of the round, which will leave you with 30. Anything that you have that makes a card, so like let's say you had Blade's Edge created, that'll be 1 more card that you lose. Let's say you manifest a card, that'll be another card that you lose. Anything like that'll do that. If you do have a full hand, you do not add cards to your hand, so nothing will be obliterated. This can be used if you're getting close to the end of your deck, and you just don't need to play any cards. Let's say your board is good, and you just need to hold on for a little bit. If you have Rise, he does round start, put 2 copies of Delve into the Past into your deck, and that'll stop you from decking out even if you go to 0 cards from Terrify. As long as he's on the board, you will not deck out unless you draw more than 2 cards per round. And then if you have counterfeit copies, you do want to try to wait until they can't use Crowstorm on you before you play it. Otherwise, you can get to a situation where you use counterfeit copies, you get hit by Crowstorm, those 4 cards are obliterated, and then you die from having no cards left in your deck. So that is Fiddlesticks. Is really hard. Most of what you're dealing with, though, is trying to not lose your entire deck. I think normally you will probably have around 30 cards in your deck, and so you can run out in 2 or 3 rounds is pretty common. Maybe 3 or 4 is probably more accurate, but yeah. And so that's that. Once Fiddlesticks gets on board, you want to remove them as quickly as possible. Dread Harvester will kill you through Spell Shield, and then you have Reap and Vengeance and Crowstorm that are just causing you endless problems. I think that's it. It has Glare, that's not that bad. It does draw a card, but not huge. Shallow Siren is also in the deck, so that'll just, whenever they draw a card, it'll Terrify. You do want to try to get rid of that as soon as possible because you don't want them drawing cards. They can do that through Philosopher's Stone, which is on a bunch of the nightmares as well. And I think that's it. I think, generally speaking, Elise is kind of more likely to kill you quickly than Fiddlesticks is, but Fiddlesticks is more likely to just run you out of cards and then you'll lose that way. And so that is the adventure. I think I covered everything. There's a lot going on, and we're talking about, 2 difficulties at the same time. But you do have the deck list, so you can look over those if you need a refresher on what you need to watch out for. I've done my best to try to show what the threats are and give tips and tricks on how to deal with each of the adventures themselves. And yeah, that is all for me. If you like what I'm doing, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.